morning, Camera Mendy.
Wow, what a new background this is. There's wild horses behind you.
Wild horses couldn't drag me away from being with you this morning, Camera Mendy.
Aw. Although I
There's
doubt it's about me. I think it's probably about everyone else in the chat. Let's see what we have. Gladiator
well,
J72,
I
Jyriki
love
42, Dr. Ransom Keys, Lady Hawk 515, The Secret of Shells, Randy Gray Fox, Cassius 335. Oh, there's Harry. Harry's on the show. He's in the backstage right now. Blade Zeus.
Thank God
and
we didn't lose
Taya.
Harry.
Sorry, sorry if I missed anyone. I've gotten up as high. I think I got everyone. Oh, 491 Bantam. Hey, Dennis, what's up? Anyway. So.
Well, we are finishing our last days.
Hello. He says hello, and so does David. Hola. Well, it's more like hola. I don't know. How would you even say this one? Oh, it's not like hola.
Hola.
It is hola. Sorry, I'm obviously in a mood. I have a pool party after this. So,
where are you going to after this, Camera Mendy?
Oh my gosh, Dennis! I'm so sorry. I was like all hyper about Dennis. Dennis is heading to his father's celebration of life. We're gonna send you lots of love, Dennis. So, yes. So, anyway, I hope you're doing good, Dennis. We miss you. So,
yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. The best thing we can do is to remember those who we've lost well, right?
Yeah.
As you know, I've lost both my parents, Camera Mendy, and that is the best thing we can do. Dennis, I wish you a good day. I wish you a good day of memories, wonderful memories. That's what I wish you.
Yeah.
Anyway, good morning. It is marvelous to be here with all of you crazy people and Camera Mendy and Harry, who is soon to come on the show. Yes.
Alphinius, if I may interrupt you, your voice sounds like 2 octaves deeper than normal. So,
really?
Yeah. So I don't know if you just
probably
woke up
because it's 5 in the morning out here.
Woke up, smoked cigars, have been partying very hard.
I have not smoked a single cigar since I've been out here.
Having lots of good belly laughs, hopefully.
We have had a wonderful time. We are actually on stepping away from the wonderful fantasy of the Blue Shine Archipelago. We are on the Big Island of Hawaii, staying with some dear friends who was one of there's a husband and wife named Liz and Kenny. And Kenny was actually one of my absolute childhood friends. So like when I was like a kid, on the streets of Oakland. Yes, it was one of my buddies. And so they their parents long ago, there goes Adam walking by in the background.
He's going to get a haircut. Now let me ask you something. Because I've heard some stories about your days on the streets of Oakland. Was Kenny a bad influence? Or were you the bad influence?
Kenny would say I was a bad influence. But,
okay.
But I would say he was a bad influence, yes. But what is interesting is Ms. Goo has been saying, I'm really getting bleached. So bleached in the hair, bleached in the beard. I really look like a full-on gray now.
Yeah.
So, but it's been a marvelous time. We come home on Monday. And it's been a marvelous time. It's been wonderful to be here with her and celebrate our 40 years together and just enjoy this wonderful, amazing place that is the Hawaiian Islands. It's just magnificent. So we've had a great time and excited to come home though. Come back and see you all at the Goo headquarters and make sure everybody's doing well and all of that stuff. So, Camera Mendy, why are you in a mood today?
Because I'm going to a pool party after this.
A pool party.
The pool party. Yeah.
Is there a pool? Is the weather nice enough?
Yeah, it's beautiful in Colorado. Not that anyone wants to actually hear about any of this. So
yeah, we're talking about the weather.
Here's the good news: is that Harry? Because I can tell you're a little low energy. I understand this. At the end of vacation,
I'm trying to.
5:45. You're just waking up. You're just waking up. You're exhausted.
And Mandy, listen. Here's the deal. I'm not low energy, but I'm sitting in the middle of their living room, trying not to awaken anyone. It's a ridiculously early hour of the morning.
That's hilarious. But the good news is we have Harry, and Harry is going to bring the party. So let's go ahead and bring Harry on. Hold on. Hi, Harry. Greetings.
Yeah, I had to unmute. I want to make sure that the sound.
I saw him, Harry. I saw you looking like you were looking up at the miniatures with a far away look.
I have multiple monitors, so I
So everyone who does not know, and I think most know, Harry has been hanging out with us since like 2019, right, Harry, or something like that? Yes, since 2019.
I was the second person to buy the Red Star rice.
Yeah, Harry was the second. He did not get the credit for being the first.
Yeah, I was
Sorry,
unhappy. I wanted to be the first. I actually went to the booth right when Gen Con opened, and I had found you guys online and wanted to be number one. And poor Alphinius was so excited he wouldn't stop talking and let me buy the product.
Wow, I feel like there's many people who have had that experience with him on a convention.
It's like there's a sales lesson in there somewhere that you have to keep selling past the buy motion.
Yep.
Oh.
It's called selling past the close.
That's
wait,
right.
wait. That's what Alphinius always accuses me of doing. But what you're telling me is that he's really the biggest perpetrator of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. He had more to tell me, and I've got the box
There
in
might
my
have been,
hand.
Harry, if you don't mind, please. There might have been an individual incident where I sold past the close, but typically I do not. And boost your volume, Harry. If you got a little
boost
volume,
my volume.
Just a little bit. Just give it a little touch, or move the mic closer, whichever.
It's more, Harry. I think it's more just keep your voice at like a consistent level, because if you get quiet, it kind
keep
of dips.
My voice at a consistent level. Wow,
there you are.
That's like stage talk, man.
Yeah, sorry.
So
anyway,
kids telling me what to do.
So we met Harry and have had a wonderful relationship since. And of course, sometime back, Harry says, I want to do some sculpting, and he starts doing some sculpting. And then he started sculpting little miniatures from various aspects of Zyathé and various stories and all those things. And of course, in the last Kickstarter, he did a wonderful bunch of sculpts for our magnificent guys and gags. So I'm gonna let you guys talk for a second and let my friends talk who are here in the background, so I can put us on mute. Go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so here is the most recent sculpt I think you put up in the Gooey Game Master Set of Enlightenment. Obviously, we show your sculpts almost every week here, and I will say that like I can see how the detail and the talent over the last 6 years has just like it's really quite incredible, Harry. So
they do say practice makes perfect, I guess.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not relevant to the stream. Like the stream is still as much a low budget production as it was 6 years ago.
So I've been watching the stream from the beginning, and I would have to say that it is better. You just kept the charm from the beginning, right? So having some of those sidetracks and difficulties is part of the show, and losing that, I think you would lose something. So don't underestimate the progress you've made in the last few years.
See, this is what I tell everyone is like, whenever I'm like, I've said this on the stream many times, Harry always says, perfect is boring. So
definitely boring.
So if ever you're questioning why the stream is not up to the top quality that it could be, it is because Harry told me that many years ago, and I've just leaned into it. So anyway, but first,
before you say anything else, here's the Harryism, right? And you probably heard this on TV a few times. Perfect is the enemy of good. And so you want to achieve good and then keep improving, because if you search for perfection, you're just going to be disappointed, number one, and you're just never going to get there. So,
I think that is absolutely true, Harry. I think that is, having worked in this creative business my whole life. But I'm going to take you all outside here just while we prepare, and I'm going to show you the view that we have from our friend's house. And it's better for me maybe to talk outside now. But look at this.
Since the house is waking up because you weren't as quiet as you thought you were going to be.
Wow.
That's pretty nice.
Wow, that is awesome. That is
so that's Maui right there, I believe.
Yeah, I've been to Maui. It's a beautiful island, beautiful part of the world. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So now I will put this down. I'm going to mute myself, go shut the door, grab a cup of coffee, and you guys start talking. I'll be right back.
Okay, we're gonna do social media. We're gonna start with social media. Me and you, Harry. Well,
sounds great. I'm on it.
And gets coffee. So okay, total. I can't hear you. You muted yourself, Alphinius.
Oh, how'd I fix it? So I don't get to do social media after all these years. Stop it, Harry. All right, you guys
sit down and do social media with us. How long is it going to take you to get a cup of coffee?
Goodness gracious.
Okay, sounds good.
We got it covered. We can do social media.
But like,
I can't do your voice, but I can certainly make it entertaining. Don't stress.
Okay. First off, adorable cube, and I do agree that we need a t-shirt that is not dissimilar to this. Beware, gelatinous cube loves to hug. And it's just it's funny how gelatinous cubes can just be so adorable. I'm just gonna say that.
And so terrifying.
Yeah. You just put a pair of googly eyes on them and they're the cutest things ever. So next up.
You know what? I am going to let you guys do social media this morning because I don't want to talk about this. I'll be right back.
I don't even know that I have anything to say. It's just the picture is worth 1,000 words.
And is this in Zyathé, I think, is the question.
I know. I'm too bad Alphinius left because we could make this canon.
Well, with him not here, we can make it canon. Just
oh my God, Rick's comment: talk about trumpeting out of your own ass.
Yeah, if you've looked at medieval art at all, there's a lot of weird stuff for sure.
Kind of makes you wonder what they're tripping on. So, what was weed like back in their day? Sorry, this got very PG-13. Forgive me. Okay, but to something a little bit different and very cool. Lore Long Lost got released. This is the travel guide to the Geisengax region of East Verdestia, and it's a journal written from the perspective of Geralt Geisengax. So, and I do love these little travel guides. They're like little novels. It's a great way to consume the information about the region since it's written as fiction or as like something that, I just think it's an interesting way to read it. So, there's Alphinius.
Yeah, I love the travel guide concept. I really liked the Lore and Libations book.
Well, you're in that one. You're in Lore Legends.
Apparently, there's a character that resembles me. That's yes, absolutely. And then Lore Long Lost, I haven't had a chance to read, but it's the same production quality for sure. And I love how we turn the color illustrations into this black and white art.
Yeah, so this is actually takes place some years before Geisengax arrives in Ethholm, and so it's kind of a prequel, if you will. And that's great to hear. I'm really glad because I think it's pretty darn wonderful too.
Well, Corey was the main author on this one.
Oh, he worked so hard. So hard.
Yeah. So, and then also like even the post that this is commented on, some man was saying that they were blown away by the quality and the number of pages and everything that we offer in there. It's not some small little thinky travel guide. It's
an actual thought book. It was going to be just 11 pages and it was 118.
Which is, another problem for but that's
when you have to print it and bind it and ship it, that becomes a different problem.
Well, especially when tariffs become part of the equation.
Poor Alphinius has had. Yeah, poor Alphinius has planned. I've been talking to Lawrence, and so Alphinius, you have added a significant amount, I believe, to the environs of Geisengax.
I did, yes. I did.
Yes, and so, but that has increased shipping costs, and already we're paying extra tariffs.
It's okay. It's going to be
but the quality of the product.
It's going to be magnificent. Yes, that's right. I did the same thing with the Gloomport, which is part of our Gloomport delay, but it's not. That's the only. Geisengax is truly the issue for the Gloomport delay. But if we didn't do Geisengax, we didn't have any money. If we didn't have any money, that's a problem because we have to pay people.
Go figure. Anyway, all this to say, should be available if you got the Geisengax Kickstarter, I believe. Was it an add-on?
Yes,
it was part of one of the
so
tiers.
You can get, I think it's part of the print package. So you got it in digital format, but if you wanted to get it in physical, you have to get the print package. And the print package is still available, and it's still a great deal. It's like $175 or something like that, plus a little shipping. And it's like $400 and something worth of printed materials.
Oh, the print package is a great deal for sure. So
and we did that. We did that on purpose because we wanted to support our magnificent backers, right? So
and in all cases, print products from Gooey Cube are a value. There is no overpriced product from Gooey Cube. So if you didn't already know that and you're watching the stream,
thanks, Harry.
They're all great value, period.
Shucks.
So prices do have to go up for all kinds of reasons. All of us know that. But there is incredible value from every product. And I own them all, so I speak from experience.
Thanks, Harry.
We didn't even tell him to say that.
Yeah, we didn't. There was no exchange of promotional consideration, as they say. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so this is actually very cool. So from Moongate, the game server, there are 2 really cool opportunities with 2 of our awesome game masters who are going to be at Gen Con. So one of them is Darkness in Gensicon and Terror in Gensicon. They're being run as a 4-week track, the 2 of those together, by Neil. And then the second one is a I believe that the Menace in the Mist is a 3-session, 4-hour per session game being run by Shein. And so they're practicing to gear up for Gen Con. And so if you can't join us at Gen Con and have had any interest in playing these games, this is an excellent opportunity. And the games over at Moongate are of the highest quality. So cannot recommend it enough. Neil is in the chat. So yeah, if you're interested, go to Moongate and sign up for them. And this is the best opportunity to play GUI games online currently, as we don't have the energy to organize much gameplay online. But Stacey has all the energy. She is amazing.
And Neil and Shein are both very, very excellent game masters.
Yeah, and very experienced.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've played in games with both of them. They're fantastic, and all the GUI GMs just go above and beyond. The fact that they practice these multiple times before they're hosting it at a game show, game event and a con is fantastic. Yeah. That is a testament to their commitment.
This is Shein, and Shein got like the maps like printed huge for Gen Con. So
yeah, he literally did full-on battle maps of miniature scale, and just they look spectacular. Just what a great picture. And he actually did the little mousy thing, right? So you could kind of move back and forth when with the picture.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't know what that's called.
I don't I think it's like you're making it like a 3D image or something.
Yeah, it's 3D photos, so you can move around and see. But yeah, these are tactical size maps so that you can play on the table with the miniatures and stuff. And so very, very powerful. For some of the adventures, it's nice because you get so much by looking at the map and being able to know what things are.
As we know, Harry, a picture really is worth 1,000 words.
Yep, true story. I think we very much believe that at Gooey Cube. So, if you search Patrick Kenny in our group put up a ton of really cool photos all over Ireland. So he's on a trip there, and there is genuinely gorgeous stuff that he's posted, just landscapes and interesting historical artifacts and things like that. So I certainly recommend going and checking out some of the cool places he's been, and then maybe incorporating them into your D&D campaign for description.
Yeah, no, there's some wonderful monuments that he took pictures of. Certainly some shorelines and all of that. And of course, this is the birthplace of the Fèirí, my friends, right? So
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Well, Ireland is the birthplace of sort of that whole concept. Although I think that goes back to some other lore elsewhere. You kind of have to trace these things back in history, sort of what influences what and all of that stuff. But it was very interesting. And if you have met Patrick, he looks pretty Irish.
Okay. This is from Neil. Important question. How many goos could a gooey goo if a gooey goo or sorry, I can't even. Important question. How many goos could a gooey goo if a gooey could goo gooeys? And there's some good answers. A gooey goo could goo as many gooey goos as a gooey goo could goo on any gooey goo day. If gooey people grab a glob of gooey goo, how large a glob of gooey goo could gooey people grab?
Anyway, that was cute, Neil.
Yes, very cute.
Yes, okay. You got and quite a bit of engagement. I like the people who said like 62.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Brad puts this up and gives the moo ha 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 along with it. Yes.
Wow, that was a really good moo ha ha ha. Good for you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Yours is good too, Harry. Mine is not that good. Just little my mud says, we all know the answer is 42.
42.
That's it, 42.
So then what is the question?
About the gooey goos.
Gooey Goo.
No, if you see the answer is 42, then what is the question?
Is this from
yes, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry, I missed it on the. I knew 42 was relevant, but I couldn't quite remember. Adam taught me that. Go figure. Okay, it's fun.
No stress.
Okay.
You have to know every reference that is thrown out by old gamers.
I've just decided to like lean into it and let people teach me things because there's so much I do not know about everything. So, this was posted by Joey, and he's about to start The Coldest of Blood. And we all know what happens in The Coldest of Blood. So,
well, we all don't. Well, I do because I've run it multiple times, but not everybody knows because they may not have played through it.
Yes, Mendy. Not everyone knows.
We literally spoiled it like 2 weeks ago. We talked about it in Epic Story Moments.
How many people in the chat know that what happens in The Coldest of Blood? Or sorry, don't know. Who does not know in the chat what happens in The Coldest of Blood?
Yeah, that's a better question. We'll come back to that.
See.
Okay, so Joe asked a question. So Dennis says me, and Porthala says me. And then Adam asks, does the blood get cold? Rick says, I don't. I do not. Okay, so there's five. That's a good portion.
What do you mean?
The blood doesn't get cold.
There's 5 people in chat that don't know what happens.
Yeah, right? maybe 7.
See?
I think we have to be careful. And then if there's a spoiler, we're going to need to put that on when you post it on YouTube. You need to mention there's spoilers in there.
We need to go no further. We're fine. We will not spoil. So
yes.
So I did think this was pretty classic, and then I was curious, right? And I thought it was like a breeding pool.
Joe never actually answered what this was or where it was from, but he previously put up a post that asked, "Can mind flayers be majestic?" And then
yes.
like 3 days later, he posted this photo, and I'm like, Joe, what is going on with you?
Yeah,
has Joe turned into a mind flayer?
Joe's like, this is me.
He was angry with the answer. It seems like he felt they could not be majestic, so maybe he pushed the guy into the pool.
So Joe, I don't remember that. So Joe felt they could not be when it finally came down.
His wife felt they could be majestic, so his wife won the argument.
I have never met a mind flayer that wasn't majestic, in my opinion. I feel like they all have that like quality, kind of like the Thu'ul, that like presence, you know? That's my opinion.
The alien, right? So the interesting thing, and I'll give everybody who wonders about sort of horror films a little bit of stuff. The fascinating thing that they learned over time about terrifying things that were actually terrifying, is that the alien needs some familiarity. So the more departed the monster is from sort of humanity, the less actually terrifying it is visually. So like the Blob is not nearly as terrifying as perhaps Freddy Krueger. Okay. And this is because the familiar is kind of important in creating terrifying looking things. So that is why actually most of the monsters in horror films and those kinds of things have humanity associated with them in some way or form or another, is because the familiar is actually more terrifying than just making up a monster and having it kind of a big blob or a big goo or something like that. It just doesn't have the same effect. Very interesting.
That is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have to say, I did the Universal Studio Tour while I was out in California last week. And I've done it before, like twice before. And I know what happens when you go on that studio tour, which is that they have the shark from Jaws, come up. And I knew it was happening, and I saw it next to me, and it still scared the crap out of me when it happened. I will say, like, when we were talking about horror and things like being familiar, you know, it doesn't always have to be a person thing. It can just be a planet thing that, like, you know.
There are some psychological fundamental things like spiders, snakes that people are afraid of, that's going to be part of horror. And then there's jump scares, which is the Jaws thing, right? So a jump scare is very different from
and you definitely that shark is a jump scare.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I agree.
What's interesting, though, about that, if anybody's familiar with Jaws and the Jaws lore, the movie Jaws, the most scary scene wasn't when the shark jumped out of the water, is when the skull rolled into the porthole under the water when they were diving. That scared more people in the audience than the shark jumping out. And that was a jump scare because you weren't expecting it. Like, there's not going to be a shark in there, and it wasn't a shark. It was a human.
I'm literally getting creeped out and getting goosebumps just talking about this.
Yeah, Jaws was breakthrough. I mean, you got to give first, of course, I think the whole idea of it, right? We're already, it's kind of a fearsome thing. The only thing I didn't like about it is, many do not know this, but I was going to be an ichthyologist when I began my college career, which an ichthyologist is someone who studies fish. So a fish called Wanda, right? We'll get that in a second. But I was going to be an ichthyologist, and I was actually kind of pissed about Jaws because it did kind of result in this sort of craze where people were out, killing great white sharks and doing all this stuff. And when you actually ponder what you should be terrified of in the world, sharks are way, way down on the list. You should be a lot more scared getting into your vehicle every day.
Or of whales, which is my other big fear.
Whales are far down the list below sharks, Campbell Mendy.
But this is actually a really good bridge into our last social media, which is about the Crit Flicks Club, which is going to be starting on June 28th. So in 2 weeks, it's going to be starting because I will not be here next week. Yad will be taking over for me and Lawrence because we're going camping with our family. So in 2 weeks, we will be discussing The Fifth Element. It won the poll. It was actually interesting to watch the poll because Labyrinth seemed like it was going to take it for the longest time. And then the Goonies kind of evened it out. And then The Fifth Element came in and took the thing. So in 2 weeks time, I think it's going to be about a 15-minute segment. And we'll see if we can keep it to 15 minutes. That's my goal. And we'll be breaking down The Fifth Element as a D&D campaign, basically. And
there is no way it's sticking to 15 minutes. The chat's going to ask questions and throw. Are you kidding me?
It'll take the whole hour.
You think so?
I was going to talk about The Fifth Element today. What are you talking about? But I was also going to explain why A Fish Called Wanda is equally powerful as a campaign concept, and you could use it for your story.
Oh yes, absolutely. A Fish Called Wanda, what a magnificent film. I mean, it's one of the best, truly one of the best ever. So join us in 2 weeks if you want to watch the Crit Flicks Club, and we're going to start that as one of our new innovations at Goo Morning Zyathé.
Cassius says that he thinks that the Crit Flicks Club should be its own episode. All right, let's see. We will attempt it, and we will see what it even looks like. We will.
You want to try before you buy. That's right. So let's give it a shot. See if it works. What content works? Because we know if we're just statting out the characters, that's going to be the least interesting part.
We're not going to.
But I mean, you could do some of that, right? There was a series of articles in Dragon Magazine, Giants in the Earth. And that's what they did. They would stat fictional characters and historical characters for D&D. So there is interest in that topic from some people. But movies can inspire the setting, magic items, characters, NPCs, story beats. I mean, there's so much you can talk about around. I mean, where do we get our ideas from, right? Books, comic books, movies, and TV shows, right? So
there's
just so much to talk about.
No, you're totally right, Harry. And The Fifth Element, of course, has a very science fiction, right, motif, right? That's the where it's based in. But the story, if you back away from the story, right, and you look at the story could be applicable in any setting, right? It's really very, very interesting.
I was ready to talk about it today. I thought today was stuff, man. I actually know the names of the characters. I know I have a talk about whether they're the PC or the NPC, how you would structure that if you're the DM. I actually had a whole story about the players and how frustrated Cornelius's player was because he wasn't the prime character. And then there's the assistant for that same character, and he got even less screen time.
I haven't rewatched it yet, Harry. I'm not ready.
I didn't have to rewatch it. I just know the whole dang movie.
Okay. Well, in 2 weeks, June 28th, come join us. It's going to be a great discussion. And I'm glad that you're talking about all this stuff, Harry, because you're talking about things I just came up with the idea based on our discussion of the mummy, and that's the extent. And I put up a poll. That's the extent of what I've managed.
Well, like one of the questions you can ask is
Mm-hmm.
this a PC or an NPC? Right. Mm-hmm. Of course, it depends on your adventure, but let's look at the story from that perspective. And then if you have a group, and this is stuff people can prepare when they're going to ask their questions from now, right? Is who's the main character, right? So in D&D, there's no main character. It's an ensemble cast. Well, Fifth Element is a perfect example of that, right? So Ruby Rod is a PC. I agree 100%. He joins the adventure later. So as a player, did he join the game, and we needed to fit him into the story? So that's a great example if you've watched the Fifth
Harry,
Element.
Harry, we're dropping out a little bit on your mic.
And my voice isn't as broad when I turn my head or when I go low. My mic doesn't pick it up.
Go back 10 seconds and say what you were saying. Say it again.
So think about the characters in your game, right? So Ruby Rod is a character in the Fifth Element. He joins about halfway through the movie. Well, I can think of a situation in a game where a new player joins halfway through the story. So how did they integrate Ruby Rod into the story? Perfect example of how that might happen. And then I was thinking of Cornelius. He's actually has his main character moments. And if you watch the movie, look for those. And there's times when he's not the main character. That's why I like this movie for D&D, because he's not the main character all the time. Well, neither is Corbin Dallas. He's not the main character all the time. And Ruby Rod sometimes is. And then Leilu is saving the universe. And this has a corollary in the Red Star Rising, right? Who's going to save the universe, or whatever you want to call it, right? Well, is she the main character all the time? And the answer is no, she's not. And she needs help a lot of the time. And so no matter if she's the protagonist or not, the group is required for them to be successful. And so if you look at the story elements of the Fifth Element as a movie, it plays right into how you might want to run your game and think about your players. And sometimes they get the spotlight and sometimes they don't. The other thing to think about is there might be a player that never wants the spotlight. And so the one character I think of is the assistant to Cornelius, right? He was forced into the spotlight at one moment in the movie and he kind of fails. And Cornelius is like, I should have never given you the job. How to do a job right, do it yourself. Wonderful approach to storytelling in a movie, but also perfect for if you're at the table and you're running the game. And so, that's the stuff that when I first watch a movie, I'm just enjoying the movie. But when I rewatch, it's how can I use this for story elements? Yes. How can I apply this to the game? If there's something cool in the game that I want to use, either for a story or even an artifact or magic item or anything like that.
Well, the fascinating thing about the Fifth Element was the magic item was a character, right? So this is the whole thing, right? Is that and we did do some of that also in the Red Star Rising with the creation of the Mugda and other things like that. So and I can't wait to get it to its end here. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think they get to Vilefang Cape and do all that, but I won't say much more, so I don't put out spoilers. But I would want to say this. I got a question before we do Creative Goo. Is Slog from the Goonies an NPC or a PC? See what the chat thinks too. I'd be interested to see what the chat
haven't what y'all have to save this for the Goonies episode.
I think everybody knows.
I haven't rewatched these movies yet. I can't.
Do you not remember? You cannot remember Slog. Hey, you guys.
I know. Yes, but spoilers. Like the fun thing about this is I'm rewatching movies I haven't seen in 15 years. So it's like I don't remember a lot of like the little nuances and the specific characters. Blade suits.
So Ms. Goo and I are going to watch them together.
Nice.
So we're going to it was a plan. So once we started down this road, I said, Ms. Goo, we're going to be doing these things on Goo Morning Zyathé, and I'd like to watch a movie with you here with some popcorn and make a night of it, And we've had quite a bit of romance out here, cameraman D.
Oh my God, I don't need to know about that.
Not cameraman D. Romance don't need to be sex, cameraman D.
Ew.
Goodness gracious.
I don't need to know about your romantic life.
Walking on the beach, holding hands, and
that's almost as disgusting. No.
Oh, whatever, cameraman D.
Okay, let's transition this over to Creative Goo, since I think that's a pretty good bridge. So we're going to talk about two things today with Harry. Specifically, we're going to talk about Creative Goo, which is a live stream that Harry did for about 4 months, I want to say, last year. And we're going to be
21 episodes.
21 episodes, yes.
And people enjoyed it. Harry had a little following, and it was growing a little bit. But the thing is, there's some things that changed in Harry's life that required him to adjust. But now those things are no longer a problem. And think this life, man. Sometimes it kicks you in the old fandango.
So we're going to talk about Creative Goo and what Creative Goo is, and all that great stuff. And then we're also going to do a little breakdown of Savage Worlds, and we're going to talk about the game system of Savage Worlds. And he's going to walk us through a little one-pager he has written for an adventure that we've run at several conventions called The Hunt for Smedley. So it's going to be a great episode. And let's get started. Creative Goo. Tell us about this.
Goo. So first, let me talk a little bit about me. And this is a great segue into that. So if you don't know who I am and you don't know what I do 100 different things. But one of my passions is miniatures. It has been since 1980. So that's been a few minutes ago. And over the years, I've painted thousands of miniatures. I have some painting awards in a few cases, and I've sculpted by hand. This is using a traditional 2-part epoxy and a character I did for a very dear friend who was suffering from cancer. And this sculpt is with him forever. But I wanted to show that, you start somewhere, and this is probably the best project I ever did. And it's a dwarf character that he made for the final campaign we were in together. And then I moved to the next slide you can show is I moved to this is some examples of painted miniatures. These are not the award-winning miniatures I did.
Hey, let me interrupt.
Yeah, interrupt. Go ahead.
Let's go back to that. Let's go back to that previous thing, because some may literally not know this, right? Is that you had to use the epoxy resins, and you take pieces and tell them about green stuff, just because this is all, so everyone understands, this is actually all been sculpted by hand, right? This is literally the little cuts and all of that stuff. So
that's
go ahead
right.
and tell
them. So 2-part epoxy is what we would use because it could survive the molding process. So vulcanized mold is the rubber you would use so you could make miniatures and produce them as a company. And so most of us in the miniature industry would take advantage of the same material for sculpting and use the same techniques. I even sold several of my sculpts to 3 different companies, and they were produced back in the day for a couple of different games. But the 2-part epoxy was called green stuff because it was yellow blue plumber's tape, I guess you'd call it, or plumber's putty. And when you mix the two together, it would react, and then you'd have some working time where you could sculpt it. And then when it cured completely, it would survive the compressed rubber process to make a mold. So very technical answer. And of course, Alphinius knows that I have all the details about the materials. But one of the reasons that the plumber's putty was used is because once you mix those two together, the properties of that material were a lot like skin. So if I pushed on one side with my sculpting tool, it would pull on the other. And so you would get results that were very, very realistic at 1 inch tall, right? So these miniatures are 1 inch or smaller in most cases.
So right? Harry, so yes, so that's what this is what I wanted to talk about, because I do think there's interest, at least I hope there is a little bit in the chat, in the art of this, right? Because the art has now progressed, but I thought it would be fun to talk a little more about. So you literally have a little set of tiny tools, right? You have because these things are sculpted in actual size. They're
sculpted actual size. That's right. That's right. And I had to make my own tools, right? So most of us now, you could very later on, before digital took on, people would manufacture tools. People would also use dental implements for their tools. There was a group from Games Workshop that would just use toothpicks for their tools, and so they could break the toothpick apart and make it into whatever they needed, and then they throw it in the trash and do it again the next time they did a sculpt. But I made my own tools. I carved them out of metal, bent them into the shape I wanted, and then put them in.
And then when you say it would survive the molding process, this is the important thing, because what has to happen is you have to then create the mold, and a lot of times miniatures get destroyed in mold process. Yes, so
these that's absolutely true. These sculpts don't survive in general the molding process. They survive long enough for that impression to be put into a mold, and now that master mold becomes priceless because that sculpt was destroyed, which happens almost every time. Sometimes you could save it, but most of the times not. So you have that master mold, and then the company would make a spin mold from that master where 5 or 6 or 10 miniatures could be spun at a time to manufacture metal models, right? You could also do it with resin. Now, the reason resin wasn't popular for manufacturers is because those resins would interact with the rubber and destroy the mold.
Yes.
And so the lifespan of the mold was maybe 200, 300 runs, and then that's why resin became limited edition, because you would ruin your mold.
All right. So now that's good for giving a history. So that's what I wanted, folks, because some folks might not have a clue about this, and I thought it'd be interesting. So now let us move to the newer thing.
Yeah. So then, like, these are just examples because I paint. I like to paint. This is one of my passions too. And the reason I started sculpting is because I couldn't find the miniatures to represent the characters and creatures I wanted. And so to defend myself from the evil corporations of not making the miniatures I wanted, I learned how to make my own, right? And then I would make them based on the characters and the players in my games and the monsters I wanted to put on the table. And so digital sculpting became big before I started. I waited until it reached a point where I could get what I wanted of the software. And so I want to say 8-9 years ago now, I started digital sculpting, and I use a product called ZBrush. I think that is the next slide. And so what the ZBrush does, and there's other software now that competes with ZBrush. ZBrush was probably the best in its time and is now probably still top, but people are catching up. And there's even free solutions for people if they want to sculpt and not have to pay for the software. There's a tool called Blender that's catching up very fast, and Blender has tons and tons of features. But the difference for digital sculpting, as you can imagine, is I'm working on a computer and I can recreate this character at will, and I can print it and have it be molded as many times as I need to. In fact, one of the companies I work with, they lost their master of a vehicle for their Warlands game, and they asked me to resculpt. And so I made them a new one, and now they have a digital version that they can just print at will for their business, right? And so you can see here I've got El Fabio that I sculpted, and a certain Gygaxian character that we've put in the Kickstarter, right? So the El Fabio I did several years ago, and just this past year we sculpted the characters for the Guys and Gax campaign. The other thing that's interesting when you look at these are renders, right? So what you can do is take that digital product and add a material to it and place it in an environment, and then the computer will render it as close to real as possible. That's not my best skill set, but if you look at the difference between Alfabio and Gerald, you can see that you can almost look like it's real. And in fact, if I change the background and put it on a tabletop, you might mistake it for
yes, absolutely
image, right?
Yeah,
so
feel like it.
That's part of it. And so there's one of the things I did Creative Goo for was to talk to people about the challenges of sculpting digitally and then turning it into a physical product or a physical 3D print, because there's things you can and can't do. The best example I can give you here is if you look at Alfabio and he's running his fingers through his hair because he loves his hair so much. And he has a finger that's sticking out like this. Well, when you print that at 1 inch tall, that finger is probably 1 millimeter or less thick. Well, depending on how you print that finger, it's just going to break off. if it even prints successfully. So those are things I talk about in the Creative Goo show, and why I thought it would be useful for people to understand the limitations, because I can represent anything on the computer. That does not mean it will be printed successfully.
Yes.
There's also details. You'll notice that all the clothing that Geralt is wearing is pretty much just, it's flowing like in the air, but there's no patterns on it. I didn't sculpt the stitches or all those things, because at 1 inch tall, difficult for a printer to generate that. And then how do you paint it? And so a lot of times the decisions I make are is to allow the painter more ability to do what they want with that miniature, right? So if you sculpt every single detail, then what does the painter do, right? And
Yes.
so those are things that in the Creative Goo discussions, or when I talk to people at conventions, those are the things I love to talk about. Obviously, it's my passion. It's what I love to spend time on. And how do you represent a character in 3D? And so that's what the digital sculpting is all about. And ZBrush is the tool I use. I spend money on that. I work for a job, so I have the money to buy it. So but it's not for everybody. I get that. It's not inexpensive. It's an investment to make.
Well, it's like anything that you enjoy. If you like writing, you're going to have some kind of an implement to write on. And these days, it's probably much more efficient to have some kind of a computer or otherwise to be able to do writing and word processing. If you do artworks and all of that stuff. Hey, the finger printed. Look at that. It looks like he's flipping me off right now. You bad brother.
Well, one of the reasons I used these pictures that had my thumb in them is for scale, right? So when you take a photograph, it's hard to know how big is it really. And so your thumb's in there, just like I had the nickel in that earlier picture, is so that you can see how small these really are. And so you can see on the right there, the finger from Alfabio printed very successfully, right? And so it printed out really nice. Now, this is resin. And so, if you want to get into 3D printing, you really need to understand what you're getting into. And I do talk about that on the Creative Goo show, and I'll be reintroducing.
Yeah, you're fading just a hair, just so you know, Harry, your voice. But also,
my voice is fading again. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. But also, we had 2 people in the chat ask what 3D printer would be a good setup, or like for like a reasonable price and stuff like that. I'm sure that's a very common question that you get, is like how to basically get into 3D printing and where to start even.
Yeah, so that's a topic in and of itself, right? So a good setup is definitely, there's a lot of variables. So FDM is where you have a spool of plastic, basically, that you're running through a hot tube, and it makes it very, very small, and it builds the print from that material from the floor up, as you can imagine. And those are very affordable. A lot more tinkering is required, and there's limits to the level of detail you get and how much fiddling you have to do. Although there's some settings that have come out recently and some technologies you could print a miniature. Like, in fact, somebody posted in the den their FDM printed Geralt, and they weren't tuned in very well, but it still printed successfully, and the person was very happy with it. So you can buy 3D printers. Now there's something, I'll talk about brands another day. I think there's just too much information. I have Saturn and a Mars from Elegoo for my resin printers. Those are the ones I use right now. And then I have an A1 from Bamboo Labs. And I got the Bamboo for FDM printing, mostly because it's more idiot-proof than other printers, and I'm an idiot. So I needed something that I didn't have to spend so much time tinkering with. I love the miniatures and all the things that go around tabletop gaming. I'm not a 3D printer hobbyist. And so the tinkering drives me crazy. So I needed something that needed less tinkering. And so if you love... Go ahead.
Excuse me, Harry, but also does not FDM allows you at a more inexpensive and more efficient to do larger scale larger prints. Like if you're doing a tank or something like that, resin is not quite as efficient for that, right? Is that, as I understand? I think I'm correct in that.
So there, for the longest time, it was significantly cheaper to do FDM. The price of resin has come down a bit, and the price of FDM's gone up a bit, so they're more even. Really, it's about the material and what you can get out of it. Resin is a liquid; it's toxic. The fumes are toxic, and so you need a much more well-ventilated place to print than you do FDM. Now, melting plastic has fumes as well, so it's not like it's completely safe, but there's more options there. And the print, it's more forgiving, I guess would be the other way to put it, although it can't get the level of detail. So there's give and take for both types of printers. It takes, and the other thing is time. So that Alphibio print probably took 6-8 hours just to print that little mini. So if you're going to print a tank or a building, you're talking about days. Yes. But that's true on an FDM printer as well. Now they've gotten faster, but they take a really long time. If I print Alphibio on there, it could be 8-10 hours just for Alphibio and 3 days for something bigger. And if it fails, you've lost all that time. So 3D printing is and that's why I talk about it in Creative Goo. I'm trying to share my experiences, give people an idea, get people interested and passionate about the topic. And what I would say, if you're interested in 3D printing, make a friend who has a 3D printer.
Yes, I know some people who've gotten together as a group and bought 3D printers. Yeah. And also, it might be worthwhile, Harry, that you talk to Riley. Who is, he's very big in resin printers. You know this, and you don't really like resin printers. And I understand that because Harry is absolutely right. You have to be very careful with these resin printers. The stuff they give off is not good for you. You do not want it floating around your house. You need to ventilate and get that stuff out of your home.
Yeah, there's a reason why when they ship you the printer, it comes with a set of rubber gloves and a mask.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. So I'm going to move the conversation along to Savage Worlds because we have a whole other segment to talk about.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Only eight minutes, but this is a preview of Creative Goo. So all these kind of questions are great things to ask Harry, and he'll happily answer them because that's one thing about Harry is that he loves to share the information he has. You're no gatekeeper.
But while we shift to Savage Worlds, the Creative Goo really is to answer questions. And a lot of what I did before is I'll be actively sculpting and just sketching with the digital world while talking through these topics, right? So it was very much a collaboration. I loved chatting with the guests. We'd get 6-8 people in the show and we would just chat while I was sculpting stuff. We actually made an Alphinius Goo riding a 3-headed chimera creature with a goat, and it was just hilarious little project we did one episode.
Thanks, Harry.
It was lots of fun. Yeah, it's available for sale on My Mini Factory if you want to buy it.
I am a patron. I do it. I am a patron. I've been for quite a long time.
So shifting gears, and some people have expressed interest in this, which is why Mandy picked this up, is Savage Worlds is a game I play. It's another role-playing game. If all you know is D&D and you love D&D, awesome. I love D&D too. I play it every week. I also play Savage Worlds, and it's a different rule system. It's very different from D&D. Some examples of what makes it different. One is there's no classes. You can craft your character however you like. So you could have somebody that fights and casts spells. You can have somebody that doesn't fight at all and still be effective in the game by helping other people and doing other things while they're doing stabby, right?
So it's a points build system, basically, Harry? Is that what happens?
Yeah, most modern games are. Even D&D, you're effectively not rolling dice anymore, right? So you do make choices when you build your character, and it's somewhat points based. We don't really have enough time to go into all of the details about that, but you have attributes like vigor and spirit and strength and smarts, much like other games. And then you have skills, and then you roll against those. And the target number is generally 4 or near 4. And so you just roll a die, and if you get to 4 or better, you're successful. And what's cool, too, about your abilities and your skills is the skill is the die. So if you have a D4 in a skill, you roll a D4. If you have a D8 in a skill, you roll a D8. So super simple. I can teach someone, get them playing within minutes, right? And then the other part of gameplay is you can have hindrances, and those hindrances have an impact on the game. So in addition to them having a mechanical impact, they have character impact. Like, let's say you're hard of hearing, that matters, or you're wanted. Well, when you lean into that hindrance during play, you get a Benny. It's called a benefit. You get a reward from the GM. So it gives you reasons to play to weaknesses as well as playing to strengths. So that's the other thing I like it. I mentioned dice rolling already. It uses a deck of cards for initiative, which makes it really fun for Gooey Cube because I just modified the deck of Perilous Fortuity, and you can use that for initiative. So it's used every combat. You're using the deck of cards. And so every round, you might not go first. You might go last. The bad guy might get an opportunity, and jokers are in the game, and they create yet more chaos, I guess, would be how you would describe it. This is Savage Worlds, and just so you know, this isn't a brand new game. 20 years
it's amazing
of gameplay, and so it's very successful, thousands of players, and you can play lots of different genres very easily, which is the final thing I'll say about this system is when you have a setting like the Fantasy Companion, the setting rules, and this came up in a brand new game that's come out this month from another streamer group that people might know, CR are the initials, and they came up with a new game called Daggerheart, and they have setting rules too, where your setting has specific rules to define how you play and the tone of the game. Like there might be sanity rules. Well, you only need sanity rules if you're in a game where sanity matters. There might be there's a rule called conviction that you can get this extra die when you do stuff if it's on your goal. And so that's a setting rule. It doesn't always use it. And so you can change the tone of the game based on these setting rules. And from that basic game, they made this fantasy companion, and they did things you'd want to see. There's more ancestry. So you have more than just elf, human, and dwarf. There's tons of them. There's more options. There's more magic. They really lean into the magic rules in this companion. So you could play a Conan style game, if you know Conan the Barbarian, or you could play a D&D style game, or something else entirely. So that's the fantasy companion. So between the basic game and the fantasy companion, you could play this game that we all like so much, this world of
Hold on, Ari. We got to go back to Chris's comment.
Oh, I made a halfling that stresses out when in conflict, so he had to take a hit from his pipe the first round. This disturbed other players.
Absolutely. And if you don't, then you don't. There is actually hindrance. There's multiple hindrances like what he's describing. There's one where you actually have to make a spirit roll to even fight at all, right? You're like, and then there's a pacifist where if you fight, bad things happen because you believe in pacifism. So you do want to talk. So this is a different role-playing discussion, but session 0 is really important even in Savage Worlds, because if there's a pacifist at the table and the rest of the guys want to kick down the door and just beat stuff up, that's going to be conflict, and you need to talk about that in advance. But if everybody leans in, then it's great. So that's a philosophy thing we can talk about. But Savage Worlds has also created, they got permission from Pathfinder, from the guys over at Paizo, thank you, because Pinnacle Entertainment does Savage Worlds, and they both started with P, and they got me all messed up. Anyway, they've done Pathfinder for Savage Worlds. And so it's all of the Pathfinder Golarian setting using the Savage Worlds rules. And so there's a bestiary, there's more, and they have the class concept that they've added to Savage Worlds. It's very clean, it works really well. And so you could play a very D&D-like game with Savage Worlds, and that's what this is. And you don't even need those other books. You don't need the Fantasy Companion. This has everything in it if you just want to play a D&D or Pathfinder-like game. And so I've done both. for the game. And so Pinnacle Entertainment, before you go so just real quick, Pinnacle Entertainment Group did Savage Worlds. And of course, there's people on YouTube that can teach you how to play the game. And so I listed both Savage Goose and Tabletop Tango, a Savage Worlds GM. Both of them teach how to play Savage Worlds. And so they're a great place to go and learn more about the game. And Mandy was just about to show you something I did, which I've run this at a couple of conventions, both for charity and just for fun. And obviously,
well, and Andy has picked it up as well and run it several times at both Genghis and Gary Con, and I think other conventions as well.
And one of the things I want to highlight that Savage Worlds leads into is for the GM to keep it really easy. So this is called a one sheet, and it's basically one piece of paper double-sided. And that's the entire amount of information you need to run this game. And this game can be played in one convention session or over 2 or 3 sessions at home. So this is all the information you need to play and run this game. So I've laid out the story of what happened. So there's some things that happen, and then there's a couple of random encounters that are possible, or NSREs if you play in a GUI game. And then the second page has the stats for things that aren't in one of the books. So I reference in the first page, like a vial is a creature in Zyathé, and I use the stats for a ratling out of the Fantasy Companion book. So I just reference what page they are. So you just pull that page and you can run it. And I created some custom stats for the Catigator, the Crocofrog, and the Abomination. And then there's an actual character, spoiler alert, called Smedley, and he's the bad guy in this story. But I actually included options for what that means. So is Smedley really the bad guy or not? And that's actually in here as part of the one page. So in 2 pages, 2 pages or 1 page double-sided, you have a ton of story you can tell with players at your table. And whoa, I just made a big noise. And so that's just really important to understand how simple you can build your story and tell a really engaging tale. The other advantage of having a story like this is the players and their characters drive so much more because you've kept the structure so light. And a lot of the adventures that the Pathfinder books have, they have these wonderful campaigns that you can get. And 2 of them so far have been translated for Savage Worlds, but it's really structured. And if you like that, thumbs up, play that. But you don't have to. The other ways we do Savage Worlds is we call them story points. And so the things that happen between those story beats is really up to the players and their characters. And then you introduce that event or that place, and then they interact with it. And then they learn something new, or they meet the bad guy or one of his minions. And then they go back to making their own choices before you introduce the next one. So Savage Worlds I have a ton of fun with. I've run multi-year campaigns, I've run one-shots, and everything in between. And it's just a game I love.
Yeah, I played in one of your games. It was great.
It was this one. It was the Hunt for Smedley. I have a funny story about Smedley really quickly, and then we have to log off because I got a pool party.
Don't forget, we also got to make sure Harry tells about Creative Goo, when it is, timing, all that.
I don't even think we have not even gotten that far. Yeah.
Coming. Okay.
Yes,
yeah, stay tuned for the resurrection of Creative Goo.
Yes.
All right.
Here's a funny story about Smedley. So I used his portrait for the thumbnail on YouTube for our NPC chat that we did. And normally we have very high ratings, like thumbs ups on YouTube. And you don't get to see this on the viewers don't get to see this. I get to see it on the back end. But we normally have like 100% and we never dip below like 90 or 80% of these, right? On the Smedley one, I had 50% rated down, thumbs down, and 50% rated with the thumbs up. So that art with the thumb up his nose.
Apparently bothers people.
Yeah, they were not about that. So.
It's a finger, not a thumb.
Yeah, well, fair enough. So anyway, Harry, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all your insight on these really interesting topics. And we look forward to seeing Creative Goo back again. So
hold on. One more thing. Everybody smile. I'm going to take a screenshot. Ready, Harry? Yes. Put that fake smile on your face. Ha ha. All right.
Okay.
So, listen, friends, thank you much for joining us as always. And Ms. Goo and I fly home on Monday, so we will be back in the studio. And Harry, thank you so much for this marvelous.
You will not be back in the studio next Saturday because Iad will be hosting, but we will be back the week after that on the 28th, where we will be discussing the fifth element on Critflix. So
how fun! Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. You are going camping. Ha ha.
It's a yearly thing, so this is what it is. Anyway, thank you all so much.
Yes, indeed. Have a wonderful day, friends. May all your adventures be sticky. Ms. Goo and I are going to go have an adventure ourselves. Mwah.
Bye.